Well, I know that your first session, I believe it was today, was with Emmanuel Tandrea, and he talked about discipleship relationships. And so what I want to talk about is another part of Christian growth that comes from being mentored and also mentoring other leaders as a part of our calling as Christians. And so one of the questions that I've always wrestled with is why are mentoring relationships important? And to illustrate this, as we think about mentoring relationships for our own lives and for those that we lead, I want us to consider for a moment the difference between a healthy family and an orphanage. A family is composed of parents and siblings who provide support, care, loving relationships, while orphanages tend to encourage shallow encounters. You know, the family offers lifelong personal commitments, an environment of support, and a certain amount of security and guidance for growth, at least a healthy family. Well, the orphanage is likely to enhance isolation, personal independence, and a lack of personal growth. You know, I found over the years that if we as leaders fail to value and nurture mentoring relationships for our lives and for those that we lead, we, could potentially end up with people, leaders, and ministries that resemble growth in an orphanage rather than a healthy family. Isn't that true? You know, the forum it's really designed, guys, to be a family where we are intentionally providing strategies for healthy, life-changing mentoring relationships, where leaders can grow in their calling and then in turn invest in and help other leaders in their callings. And we've seen the Lord use the forum in that way. Now, scriptures, of course, instructs us to develop mentoring relationships like this. And in 1 Timothy 2:2, Paul writes to Timothy, and he says, "The things that you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." And what I want to unpack in this talk is the need for mentoring relationships. And then I'm going to provide some principles from Paul's mentoring relationships in 1 Thessalonians of how he mentored. Thirdly, we're going to look at Paul's mentoring relationship with Timothy. And then finally, how you can practically make the most of the European Leadership Forum's mentoring opportunities. So let's go ahead and first look at the need and the challenge for mentoring relationships and developing leaders. And I think a good way to approach this is to look at what are some of the obstacles to developing mentoring relationships like Paul had with Timothy. And I'd like to look at three obstacles, at least obstacles that I've seen and faced. Yours may be a little bit different than this. So I think first, I've seen that Christian leadership often prioritizes teaching and running programs, not mentoring relationships. And you know, my experience working in the church as a pastor for 20 years in two big churches was that leadership tended to be equated with the gift of speaking and teaching in the church or running good programs, but not on mentoring and developing mature leaders. And you know, of course, there's an important role in leadership for speaking and developing programs, isn't there? You know, but not at the expense of investing in mentoring relationships and leaders. Second, again, in my context, individualism from the West has eroded away biblical relationships that's really needed for mentoring. And in my context, in the U.S., the majority of American men don't have one close, accountable, transparent, truth-speaking relationship with another man. And that's sad, guys. In Europe, some of the breakdown in mentoring relationships comes from a hierarchy in Christian leadership, you know, where one man does it all without a biblical vision to build into other leaders through mentoring relationships. But you know, whatever the reason, this eroding of our relationships has left us fragmented and without an ability to mentor others, where one man sharpens another, as Proverbs exhorts us to. And then the third reason why we don't invest in and mentor others that I found is the treadmill of success and busyness in ministry. And we're all busy, guys, aren't we? Over busy. I'm amazed at how busy we are, even with the pandemic. But unfortunately, this has left little time and place for mentoring relationships, unfortunately, for our own lives, and in many cases, in developing the next generation of leaders. Now, personally, I don't know where I would be today if it hadn't, been someone who came alongside me as a very young leader and take time, to build into a relationship with me and mentor me during a very difficult time in my life. I was attending one of the best Christian colleges in the US, but I didn't have one close friendship. And I hit a train wreck. Relationally, emotionally, and spiritually, I had shriveled up. But by God's grace, he brought another dear brother into my life, Greg Pritchard, who I know has spoken here. And he mentored me for 2 years. He helped me to grow. He worked through some apologetic struggles that I had, and he really helped me to flourish as a very young leader in my life. And by God's grace, as I already said, I went on to pastor and disciple for 20 years at 2 large churches, primarily developing and mentoring other leaders. And I've been doing this for ALF now for 10 years full time. It's been a real joy. 35 years later, guys, I still meet with Greg every week. We now have a mutual mentoring relationship where we can share honestly and encourage and pray for, and we hold each other accountable. We've become comrades in ministry and comrades in life. And my question for all of you is, what are the obstacles that keep you from developing these kinds of mentoring relationships for your own life and your own leadership? And also, is there a younger leader in your life that you can think of who needs you to be a mentor to them, like Greg was to me? Or maybe right now you're in a season where you just need a mentor yourself. Don't let any of these obstacles or any obstacles in life for that matter, keep you from developing mentoring relationships like these. God has created us for these, guys. So anyways, those are some of the obstacles to mentoring. What I want to look at next is Paul's understanding of mentoring from 1 Thessalonians 2:1 through 12. We need to dig down into the Bible to see the model here for this. This is the best passage for understanding Paul's leadership and how he mentored that I've found. And in 1 Thessalonians 2:8, Paul writes to the Thessalonians to remind them about his care for them while he was with them. And he explains, we loved you so much that we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our own lives, our very lives as well. You see, what Paul is saying is that a leader's role goes beyond knowing and communicating Christian knowledge and facts, as important as those are, to being willing to love, guide, guard, care for, mentor, and share our lives with the people that we lead. That takes time, guys, doesn't it? And Paul's mentoring was not just about content. It was not just about a method, but it was about developing loving relationships with those that he mentored. And I love that. I love that about Paul's leadership. I love that about his mentoring. Now, Paul gives us a glimpse into his mentoring relationships through the lens of the different familial roles that he had with the Thessalonians. Paul was a supportive mother, he was an instructing father, and he was a mutual brother. And in 1 Thessalonians 2:7, Paul says that as a leader and mentor, he was gentle among you, like a mother caring for her little children. And then a few verses later, Paul switches from the mother imagery to that of the father. And in verses 11 through 12, he says, "For you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children, doing what? Exhorting, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God." A little bit more instructive role on Paul's part. And then a few chapters later, in First Thessalonians 5:17, he encourages a group of what he calls more mature brothers to partner with him in this ministry of mentoring. And he encourages them to admonish the idle in the church, to encourage the faint-hearted, to help the weak, and to be patient with them all. So what Paul is telling us in these passages is that the Thessalonian members had different needs for mentoring. And so Paul mentored each one of them according to where they were at in their walk with God. Some Christians needed the support and the gentleness of a mother. Others needed the direction and moral exhortation of a father. And others didn't need Paul to be a mother or father at all. But as brothers and partners in the ministry, they needed to be encouraged to invest in and mentor and care for others in the community. So, for the last 12 years of my life, I've been meeting with 3 other dads and our sons every summer, just to spend time mentoring our sons together. It's been a highlight of my life, guys. It's been wonderful. And my son Nick was 6 years old when we first started meeting. All these boys have grown and they've matured in Christ in their individual callings. And they're either headed to college, they're in college, or just finishing up college. Can you imagine us as dads providing mentoring to our sons today as if they were still 6 years old? That would be pretty absurd, wouldn't it be? You see, they're at a completely different place, spiritually, relationally, and as young leaders than they were 12 years ago. In the same way as we build mentoring relationships with other leaders, our mentoring needs to be loving and it needs to be personalized. We need to think about where leaders are and what they need. Do they need to be supported like a mother? Or do they need moral encouragement as a father? Or do they need to be challenged in their calling to invest into others as a mutual partner and brother? You see, it's and this is just something I found. It's not about developing relationships and helping leaders grow where we think they need to grow. It's meeting them where their needs are and where they really need to grow. It's according to their needs, not according to ours. That's important. Again, Paul's relationship with Timothy is also an example of how Paul mentored. And on one hand, Paul was a parent to Timothy, a loving parent. And in 1 Timothy 1:2, Paul refers to Timothy as my true child in the faith. And then in Acts 16:1 through 3, Timothy's introduction to Paul and his first lesson as his child in the faith was the importance of teachability. And Timothy was instructed by Paul to be circumcised. I think that's the ultimate test for teachability right there, being circumcised. Now, in our context today, I don't recommend starting your mentoring relationship by circumcising your mentees. But in his context, Timothy was learning the importance of being relevant and removing a stumbling block in his ministry to the Jews. Now, on the other hand, Paul was a mutual brother and a partner in the ministry with Timothy. And in Romans 16:21, he refers to him as my fellow worker. Again, we already read this, but in 2 Timothy 2:2, Paul writes the things which you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, and trust these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. And in 1 Thessalonians 3:2, he refers to Timothy as God's co-worker in the gospel of Christ, who Paul sent to establish and exhort the Thessalonians in their faith. Timothy was a partner in the ministry with Paul at this point in time. Now, it's important to realize that these kinds of mentoring relationships that Paul had with Timothy, moving from a loving parent to a mutual partner in the ministry, it didn't happen overnight, guys. This took place over the span of 20 years. And Paul, in this mentoring relationship, developed a lifelong friendship, a partnership with Timothy as the Lord used Paul to help shape him as a person and in Timothy's leadership from the Lord. And I think it's sad that we unfortunately don't see these kinds of mentoring relationships today. It's really rare in Christendom to find this. And I think that's sad, you know. My question for all of you is, you know, do you have a Timothy in your life? You know, who's your Timothy? Who are you building into and mentoring on a regular basis? This is a part of our biblical calling from the Lord as leaders, guys. And we can't do this from the pulpit. We can't do this from running programs in the church. This is life on life, close quarters mentoring with God's people. And in essence, that's really the vision of the forum. The forum's really designed to be a place where you connect with resources and relationships to mentor and build into you as a leader, but also over time that there's a partnership forum where you'll find ways to give the forum away and invest in and mentor faithful leaders in your own national context. So I want to unpack with the rest of our time, what are the year-round mentoring initiatives of the forum? And I think it's important to understand, guys, that the forum isn't just an annual conference, but it's a year-round movement, a mentoring movement that's designed to unite, equip, resource leaders like you throughout the whole year. And I think that the biggest mistake that people make about ELF is to think about it only as an annual conference. But you know what? Like an iceberg, 90% of the ELF is invisible. 90% of ELF takes place outside of the annual conference. And so we had, this is almost every year, we have about 850 different kinds of events that take place across Europe using forum resources, speakers, ideas, curriculums, and they're all led by leaders like you. And this is all done organically. We're not really involved in controlling any of that stuff. It's just leaders coming and connecting to resources and then using them in their context. But the forum also does initiate many mentoring initiatives to mentor and help leaders. Let me explain just a few of these. We have speaker tours. Every year, the forum plans out 2-week speaker tours that are really designed to address some of the critical needs that come up across Europe using some of the best forum speakers in specialized areas. And so 2 of these that we've offered are tours in church revitalization, and then also apologetics, or another word for that is persuasive evangelism. And we're looking to add a third one here soon on discipleship, because again, that's a critical need across Europe right now. Right now, because of the pandemic, we've transitioned these to be online leadership seminars taking place this June, and there's still availability for those guys if either one of those sounds interesting to you. We also have year-round mentoring. The forum offers mentoring throughout the year, and we have hundreds of leaders that are mentored one-on-one during the forum. Many of those are taking place now. And many of those relationships actually continue on throughout the year. I hope that you guys have had a chance to get connected into one of those one-on-one relationships during the forum right now. But in addition, we have 250 leaders that partake in one of the forum's 28 year-round mentoring groups this year. And you can see a list of them on the screen here. Year-round mentoring groups gather leaders with similar callings or ministries into small groups of 10 to 15 participants, and they meet together for an entire year to be mentored and equipped by senior leaders from the forum. Wonderful, wonderful opportunities to be mentored. Let me give you an example, just one example of the impact of one of these year-round mentorings on a key leader that's been coming to the forum. Dave Patty, you guys may have heard of him. He's been involved in training youth leaders and leading national and international youth movements in Europe for over 30 years. And he serves as the president of Josiah Venture right now. Josiah Venture currently has over 300 staff serving in 14 countries of Central and Eastern Europe. The JV team shared the gospel face to face with over 30,000 young people last year, and they worked directly with 417 churches and trained over 6,000 leaders. You know what? Dave was a participant in one of the Forum Year-Round Mentoring initiatives. And Dave, he says this about the Year-Round Mentoring, where he was mentored by Bob Beal. He says, as a leader of a growing multinational mission organization, I regularly feel the need to increase my own personal leadership capacity. And that's why I was thrilled with the opportunity to participate in the forum's Leaders of Organization track with Bob Beal. In just a few minutes, he honed in on several key moves that will significantly increase our potential as a team. And then he gave some really practical and transferable advice as to how to achieve it. I found myself quoting Bob many times in the following months, and I see lasting results from his skillful help. Guys, that's just one example of 1 year-round mentoring, how it impacted one leader, and how one of these year-round mentorings could potentially impact you as well. We also have national forums. These have been started across Europe in countries like Hungary, Wales, Ukraine, Sweden, Romania, Albania, Bulgaria, and we just started the first global one in Ghana last October. These forums began because leaders like you asked, why can't we unite, equip, and resource gospel leaders in our own country? And so what we've done in the forum is we've come alongside these leaders. We've developed partnerships with these leaders. We've helped them to launch their own national forums where they develop their own unique networks and their own unique strategies for mentoring the leaders. And these have been very effective strategies across Europe right now for mentoring. And then finally, there's the FOCL online and internet strategy. The European Leadership Forum's push to fully utilize online mentoring opportunities has included providing media resources on a central website. We offer real-time interaction via 3-hour masterclasses. There's monthly webinars that are done that you can get involved in. And there's thousands of hours of video and audio recordings that we have online for leaders to access. I want to give you one example of an excellent online teaching resource of FOCL's, and that's a 3-hour masterclass that was taught, I believe it was last October, by Peter Williams on the credibility of the Bible. Peter is just amazing in this area, guys. He had over 1,500 leaders that attended from over 110 different countries, and they just loved it. They ate it up. This is an area where they needed help, and the Lord used it. So, guys, all these different forum mentoring strategies that I talked about, they've really been designed to serve you, and they're designed to serve leaders in your country that might be English speaking as well. I think most of us have heard or read, one of Tolkien's books, The Lord of the Rings. Maybe you've seen a movie based on his novel. Something you might not know is that Tolkien almost gave up writing and publishing his first novel. And in one of his letters, he tells us that the only reason he finished and published his first book was because of the ongoing encouragement that he received from his mutual mentor, Jack Lewis, which was just another name for C.S. Lewis. You see, without this encouraging, committed relationship of Lewis in his life, Tolkien would have failed to produce one of the greatest literary works of his time. and he would have failed, guys, to become what God had called him to be and to do. And I just want to encourage you all in conclusion, don't journey through life alone without mentors or a mentor in your life. We all need others who will encourage us. I need that to pray for us, to sharpen us in our callings from the Lord, and find leaders to be a mentor to. There are leaders out there, like I was, that need you to come alongside them. We need each other, don't we, in the body of Christ in this way.